But first, we want to talk about something that was said by Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov yesterday at the UN, and it was unscheduled, unscripted. He just sort of blurted this out. Take a look.
Perhaps it would be useful to consider how things are with freedom of speech in the United States. I've heard that Tucker Carlson has left Fox News. It's a curious news. What is this related to? One can only guess, but clearly the wealth of views in the American information space has suffered as a result.
Well, this is interesting, especially since I believe there's a network reaching out to Tucker. I don't know that has Russia ties, but what's going on there?
I mean, the Russian state government. I mean, Susan Page, you have Sergei Lavrov, who has been, of course, supporting the illegal invasion of Ukraine, the war crimes against Ukraine. We had two things happen yesterday. One, we had Sergei Lavrov mourning the fact that Tucker Carlson is no longer able to spout what he considers to be pro-Russia talking points. I mean, you saw that in Russian television all the time, people playing Tucker Carlson clips. You had another interesting thing happening. Politico reporting that the Pentagon was gleeful, celebrating that a guy who attacked the United States military, basically doing Russia's bidding, who attacked the United States military and China's bidding as much as Tucker Carlson did, even saying that U.S. helicopters used in Afghanistan, that the military was going to send them to the United States to kill Americans who voted for Donald Trump. The United States military leaders at the Pentagon grateful that you have a guy that constantly was spouting anti-U.S. military comments finally off of an American network.
Yeah. Explain to me, please, why the Russian foreign minister felt compelled to comment on a cable TV anchor in America and his future. I mean, we should be asking Tony Blinken, I guess, the next time he sits down with reporters about his views on Russian anchors. It is perplexing to me. Maybe you have an explanation why the Russian foreign minister thought this was, number one, in his purview, and number two, helpful to him to issue this comment on.
Molly, I mean, maybe you can you can provide some insight for us, Molly. I mean, the thing is, though, again, I can't underline this enough. There was a host on an American network who constantly attacked the United States military and told millions of Americans that the United States military was going to bring helicopters that they used in war in Afghanistan to kill Americans in the United States who voted for Donald Trump. That was the dark overture of that, along with law enforcement officers from the FBI were going to come and kick down doors to go after people who voted for Donald Trump. I mean, Lavrov and the Russians could not have had a better, more propaganda points from a guy who said, why wouldn't I support Vladimir Putin in the invasion of Ukraine?
Yeah, I mean, there were so many times where you'd match up what Tucker Carlson was saying was what you were seeing on Russian TV. I mean, I would say if you're an American cable news host, you want to live your life so that Sergei Lavrov is not upset when you get fired and not working it into the conversation. Like, obviously, Tucker Carlson looms large for these people, and that's probably not a great sign.
Well, and you know, what is so crazy, Jonathan O'Meara, is Fox News is owned by the same company that has a reporter who is rotting in Russian jail right now. Talk about a house divided against itself. I'm not exactly sure why he was fired, but he certainly wasn't fired for saying things that played right into Russian television's propaganda every night. He wasn't fired for that. But you actually have a Wall Street Journal reporter rotting in jail right now, kidnapped by the same Russian government that Tucker Carlson was saying, I have nothing against them. Why wouldn't I? Why wouldn't I be for Vladimir Putin? I think at one point he may have said that he was cheering for Russia. We'll get the exact quote to make sure we have that right.
No, he did.
Did he?
He did. Early on in the conflict, he suggested that he was, he said it, and I'm sure we can find the clip, that he was rooting for Russia. It was early days of the invasion, but he did say it. We should note that Wall Street Journal reporter, the last we saw him was last week. He was in a Russian courtroom. He was in a cage. He was in a cage.
Evan Gershkovich in a cage.
In a cage in a Russian courtroom.
And Tucker Carlson doesn't know why he shouldn't be cheering against Vladimir Putin? What's going on here?
And RT.
Why do you have Sergei Lavrov? Why do you have Sergei Lavrov bemoaning the fact he's gone? Why do you have RT television saying they want to hire him? Why constantly were they playing his clips on Russian television on their main propaganda network shows at night?
I'm sorry, really random, but Kevin McCarthy, why give him the January 6th tapes?
Yeah, and that's who Kevin McCarthy gives the tapes to.
Yeah, well, clearly the Russians thought that Tucker Carlson was useful, that he was spreading a message that they wanted to get out there. So they were happy to amplify it on their own airwaves, and their state television has already offered him a job were he to take it. So on this idea that that Tucker Carlson was spreading this sort of information, both domestically and international talking points. Eugene Daniels, let's hear a little more about the story that Joe just brought up there about some relief in the Pentagon that Fox News, which is so often on the TVs and military bases, I've seen it when traveling with the president, you have as well, I'm sure, that he's no longer on their airwaves. Tell us more about it.
Yeah, I'm a military brat, so at every ID appointment, every doctor's appointment on post, we would see Fox News up. So that is a large part of military culture. And, in this story that our colleagues did, it was about these military officials, folks in the DOD, who have had beef with Tucker Carlson going back and forth for years. Since Joe Biden walked into office, Tucker Carlson talked about how the military was weaker now that they were focusing on cultural and bringing in more diversity, attacking military leaders for doing that. He attacked them when talking about women in the service. In the service, John Kirby, who was then a spokesman for the Department of Defense, rebuked Tucker Carlson, which isn't something that usually happens. And so what we constantly heard and read in the story is that they said they were sick of him bagging on the military. And I think one person told our colleagues, good riddance. And that's something that you heard over and over and over again, because, this is a man who, as a part of the Republican Party and media apparatus, they used to talk about how the military was good. They used to talk about how strong our government would be, how strong the United States would be as long as we have a strong military. But going after military leaders for all of these types of things over and over, he has no friends, I think, or has few friends in the upper echelons of the DOD leadership. That's what you're hearing. There's obviously folks throughout that probably see that, but at the expense of, and you talk to them, really it's about how foreign people, foreign leaders, foreign adversaries see our military. When you have someone like Tucker Carlson, who is seen as a voice of the right, talking about how our military isn't prepared, that it's weaker because they're focusing on bringing in more people of color, people who are LGBTQ+. And so, yeah, that story, I would suggest a lot of people go read it. Very insightful. You don't hear a lot of DOD officials talking about media personalities.
Yeah, you actually have, how interesting, you have the Russian foreign minister mourning it, and you have the United States military celebrating it.
Is that just a coincidence?
And at a time, constantly, and there are Republicans actually in the House who are constantly attacking the United States military, and in the Senate who say they wish our military could be more like Russia's military. Really?
Really?
Really? Do you really want us to be that bad? Do you really want us to be that weak? Because right now, again, in my travels across the world, I can tell you the United States military is more feared today than it's ever been. They're seen as more powerful today than they've ever been. And if you don't believe it, ask the 500 or so Russians who tried to bum rush our troops when they were in Syria. That lasted a couple of minutes. They had to bury 500 Russians because you put 2,500 of our military men and women in the middle of Syria. 2,500. Think about this. 2,500. They wipe out ISIS. They stop the Iranians from advancing. They stop the Russians from advancing. The Russians didn't like them there. Guess what? They just had to deal with it because it didn't go well when they tried to get them out of there. Assad put in his place. I could go on and on. And let me say this too. Everybody's saying, oh, 2,500 people in Afghanistan, 2,500 U.S. troops in Afghanistan. They'll never be able to hold the country down. Really? What happened when we took those 2,500 people out of Afghanistan? What happened? 2,500 troops was able, just 2,500 U.S. troops were able to hold an entire country together. Was it pretty? No. No, it wasn't. There were still problems, but they maintained order. You remove U.S. troops, those 2,500 troops, from Afghanistan, and all hell breaks loose. All chaos breaks loose. You do that when, in Syria, Trump wanted to take our 2,500 people out of Syria and kept knocking them down, knocking them down, knocking them down. The fact is, the U.S. military is stronger today than it's ever been. And Republicans shamelessly, Jonathan Lemire, in Congress keep, not most, but backbenchers who would echo what Tucker Carlson said, just shamelessly attack our military, claiming they're weak, claiming they should be more like Russians, when in fact the Russians would give anything to have a military that was 1/10 as strong, 1/10 as potent, 1/10 as powerful as the United States Armed Forces.